Cystic fibrosis can be a devastating diagnosis, but living with the disease can bring positivity and a new appreciation for each day. From the Bonnell Foundation in Detroit, Michigan, it's the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. Nothing on the Bonnell Foundation Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast should be considered medical advice. Medical advice can only come from your CF physician. Here's your host, Laura Bonnell.
So we're talking to Dylan Mortimer, and you are now living in New York. You're an artist. Mm-hmm. And we actually met through your artwork that I saw on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
It's very cool. I love your art. It's beautiful. Why don't you tell us about you? Tell us when you were born and how your parents diagnosed you.
I was born in 1979 and was diagnosed at 3 months with failure to thrive. They weren't able to say cystic fibrosis till, I don't know, another month or so. That's when I was born. My parents kind of did treatments on me from being a baby. They were really faithful with doing treatments and bringing me to appointments. Really well managed care. I mean, I was blessed to not really have to do inpatient stays till high school, really. I did a couple, home IV tune-ups before then. But yeah, that's when, I was able to, for the most part, stay out of the hospital till then.
So you're diagnosed. Did your parents have any idea that you had cystic fibrosis, or were you the first born child?
I was the first. Yeah, okay. I was the first. I have a younger brother that has it as well. I was the surprise in regard to cystic fibrosis.
And then did they find out, like us, we fit into the Ashkenazi Jewish and the Irish Catholic heritage? Was it, Did they trace it back? Does anyone else in the family have CF? Did you find out things once you were diagnosed?
No. My mom was diagnosed with CF at nearly 60. So she just had, such a mild form of it that she didn't know all that time.
I had no idea. So your mom has cystic fibrosis?
Yeah. Again, it was not diagnosed until, later. She's in her mid-60s now, but yeah.
So
it's crazy.
It is crazy, but so interesting. Was she diagnosed then after you were born, or at that point did she know when she
had no idea till 5 years ago, and just had symptoms of coughing and such, and they, actually did a test. So
wow, that's amazing. I've never heard a story like this.
I know.
I mean, it's your crazy story, but it is really crazy. So
yeah. How
is your mom handling her diagnosis after raising you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's heavy, emotionally, but I mean, physically she's doing well. I mean, her PFTs are in the 90s still, and she's done some rounds of antibiotics here and there. I mean, she's in her mid-60s having other, physical challenges that probably are more pressing than the CF is a lot of times. So yeah, she's fighting through like we all are.
Wow. So take us through your life just a little bit. So at what point did you meet your wife, and when did you talk about the fact that you had CF?
I met her 4 days before I moved to New York City the first time to do grad school. So we kind of got to know each other long distance over the phone. In our second conversation, I just told her, like, hey, here's the situation. And, some friends had already given her heads up, and so she kind of knew. And her response was, I'm not scared of that. I admire the fight, and I want to join in the fight with you. So my response was, I'd like to marry you. So that's pretty much, it was about 5 months later that I proposed, and then later that year we were married. So yeah, it's beyond words, the level of humility and just blessed and blown away that I am by her, that anyone would choose to knowingly step into a battle like that, is really outstanding and romantic. And she's obviously a wonderful woman, correct? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
You came back to New York for grad school. Was it art?
Right. So that's when I went the first time. This was in 2004. And so we stayed through all of grad school at SBA School of Visual Arts, and then moved back to Kansas City, where we had met. Was an artist all the time, but actually was working with the church and preaching sermons and doing all this kind of stuff. And we had 2 boys. And then I don't know how fast in the story you want me to go, but yeah, that's...
No, I want to touch on as much as we can, but
sure.
where you are now is a wonderful place because you're inspiring so many people. But tell me a little, and I want to talk about that also, but tell me a little bit about the journey of getting to where you were when you got married. How was it growing up? Because it was different 39 years ago.
It was very different, yeah. In my experience, again, feel really blessed and fortunate that the few times I would go inpatient and, back when they roomed CF patients together, there'd be, my roommate would have been there for 3 years in the hospital, and then the girl next door was getting a lung transplant at a really young age. I mean, it just, I don't know. It would always put things in perspective of how fortunate I am to not be fighting those battles, at 10 years old and that kind of thing. And so I, was able, I really wasn't limited growing up and doing sports and, played basketball until high school and, was able to do pretty much anything. Around high school, I started focusing more on art anyway. And so, focus kind of shifted there, went through college and then later grad school and kept fighting through rounds of antibiotics and things, and but stayed pretty stable for all that time, really.
And so you get married and your wife's wonderful and not scared by the disease, but then 2 years ago you need a lung transplant. And how old are your boys then?
They were 5 and 7.
So how was your health at that moment, and how was that whole process with your kids and your wife?
It was heavy. I had just, after our second one was born, probably, about 6 months to a year after that, lung function started to decline slowly and gradually. And really, my right lung was, more diseased than the left lung, and that began to kind of close up. So we started having conversations with that around lung transplant for years. And then, was evaluated, but was too early and was able to kind of hold it off for a while, but then just had episodes with coughing up blood and just had, multiple episodes and multiple embolizations, and through really a 5-month stretch, really wrestled with that. And so that was kind of the thing that, I was ambulanced from Kansas City to St. Louis to get listed, immediately. So that was heavy for my wife, for my kids, especially tricky with the kids because you kind of, they're going to know some things are going on and you want to talk to them about it, but you also want to keep a positive spirit, and just finding that balance of, honesty, but also hope in some of those really dim circumstances is hard.
Right. And I know you're positive. It comes across in your Facebook posts, your whole person.
Yeah.
And we are too with the girls. You have to live life. That's the whole point,
you do.
Right?
You do. Right. That's right.
You wake up, you can breathe again. And then these last 2 years, was it that you were just diving into your artwork and obviously your family, or?
Yeah. It just was going full throttle on everything. I'm feeling the best that I ever felt in my life post-transplant. Now my family can't keep up with me, and I'm running races, and we're, wanting to travel every second we can and go overseas and do all this stuff and making art like crazy. And so it was incredible, And even when they found rejection, I was still feeling incredible for, 4 or 5 more months. I was still running, still even at 40% lung function, was still running 3 and 4 miles. So it's only recently that it's kind of hit me to where it's really tough to go up a flight of stairs now.
So that's where you are right now. It's again difficult.
Yeah, I'm at 15% lung function now. So yeah, so it's really hard. I can do it. I just go real slow.
Wow.
And, I'm still not on oxygen standing. I'll use it with exercise or, if I have to walk a really long way. But yeah, it's kind of, again, on the whole, as I'm sitting, I feel, the best I've felt in most of my life. So it's when I'm moving that becomes a problem. But.
And I've learned a lot from you. Describe your art. It's beautiful and you get the feel of CF. From the pink tree to your artwork. Describe a little bit.
Yeah. So this is in the last 5 years. I was hesitant to ever include anything about my health in my art. It just felt contrived or forced or whatever, up until that point. And when we started having conversations around lung transplant, it felt right to bring it in, and it just felt honest, and so I did. And the response has been amazing and overwhelming in a good way. before I was making artwork about like faith and prayer and these kind of things, but almost like topically, like about the idea of prayer. And this has been, to be sure, more personal and more of my own journey and my own prayers and my own wrestling through life. And I think people have just connected with that in a different way, you know, in a more emotional way, in a more personal way. So I started to incorporate, you know, imagery of bronchial trees and such, and it just felt right to do. And so I kind of went in full throttle with it. And then I, you know, since it's gone other places, but it's very influenced by the things that kind of permeate my life now with, you know, cellular imagery and scars and, you know, bronchial trees. And so there's trees as symbols, and so it kind of trees in different ways for different things, and there's kind of emanating healthy cells. And so it's really kind of envisioning healing, you know, on the whole. Like it's trying to express what it feels like to really feel well, you know, for the first time in your life. Also imagine, you know, like what it's like to be that way all the time, to be fully healed. And so I use shiny materials, usually glitter, in almost everything. There's kind of like a lot of collage, if it's 2D or aluminum, if it's sculpture, lots of glitter on top of glitter on top of glitter. And so I use that really, again, before I was even thinking about incorporating more of my health, but it just started to make more and more sense as a medium, thinking about the disease of cystic fibrosis and being born with it and sort of the ugliness of it all. And so I describe it as like, it feels like most of your life you've been trying to sprinkle glitter, you know, over a really ugly situation and trying to transform something that's really kind of seemingly dirty and ugly into something that's beautiful. I feel that's sort of the struggle of all CF patients that have been given a really hard hand, a really hard, you know, diagnosis, and how do you transform that, your own understanding and for people to see. So that's kind of the struggle of the artwork. So it takes kind of different forms, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, but it's all trying to assemble, you know, something hopeful out of seeming hopelessness.
And I love it. I have a small piece of yours, but I love it. It's beautiful. It's called Regeneration.
Thank you.
And I totally get your work. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, like any work, you get a feeling from it. And I get a feeling of hope from the piece that I have. And it's very emotional. And one of my daughters saw it, and she loves it. Of course, she has CF too.
Oh, good.
So, you know, she felt something just walking by it. So it's really, really beautiful. So
thank you.
Thank you. What do you say to their kids? They're still very young. You know, you're waiting for a second lung transplant. Who knows how long that will be? Sometimes it's a long wait. There's so many factors that go into getting a transplant, especially a second one.
What do I say to other CF patients?
To other CF patients, where is your mindset right now?
Right. I would tell them the same thing I'd want them to tell me, to keep fighting. It is ridiculously hard sometimes, you know, and it's crushing and it feels crushing. And, you know, try not to tear up over the phone. It is critical to continue, to keep fighting and put one foot in front of the other, especially in the moments where you just feel like you have nothing, you have no capacity to do it. And so absolutely draw from whatever source inspires you to get the next foot in front of the other. For me, without a doubt, my family is a tremendous support of inspiration, and I fight so much of my fight is thinking about my kids and my wife now, and so that's huge. But even more than that, you know, for me, my faith like compels me to keep going in the most difficult moments, and the idea of, you know, God loving me more than I could ever understand, that it's unconditional. It's not based on how well I even fight the disease or not, you know?
Yeah, you feel the power of it, obviously.
Yeah, you do, you know, and, you know, so again, I would just hope that I want somebody to tell me, I go, you have more love than you will ever know. That's what I need to hear, especially when it's hard to breathe, when it's hard to get upstairs, when my kids are going crazy and I feel like I just can't do it. That, and I'd add, you know, the number of times I've been told that, you know, wouldn't have made it this long, or wouldn't have kids, or wouldn't, you know, be married and all those things. I mean, we live to defy odds like that, you know. I feel God has a bigger dream for us than we could ever dream for ourselves. But, you know, how can you know if you don't keep fighting? So
Right.
So, I'm preaching to myself because it's like, man, it's hard right now, but the fight must go on. So
I love that you've made your own journey. I mean, so many people can get discouraged for much smaller things, but you just have to keep going.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you have the support of the entire CF community and people that are outside the CF community that have learned about you.
Yes.
And switching gears a little bit, it's real controversial. There's some people who think the new movie, 6 Feet Apart, about two people who fall in love. Any thoughts on that movie?
Yeah, I've only seen the trailer, and look, I know why some people are getting upset a little bit and this and that, but I'm like, chill out, man. Everybody, any movie you can think of that involves some kind of social consciousness about a disease, a group of people, can be critiqued and diced and sliced to shred, so I don't know how helpful that is right now to be overly critical of it. I just go, hey, it's going to bring awareness. I know some people argue, well, not all awareness is good awareness, but, I'm definitely more in the camp of I don't see really what harm it could do. And it could absolutely bring more awareness to a disease that we can get cured, this disease can be history in the near future. So why not bring more attention to it? I'm with it.
Right. I also looked at the book, and in the back of the book, it talks about the tribute to people with CF and how they really wanted to make sure that people knew that this was a tribute to people with CF. So I agree. I think it's a great educational. People are going to learn something, and there's never been a movie that's 100% accurate that I know of.
No. Yeah. It's a movie. It's not real life. That's sort of part of it.
Right.
I understand the outcry and some of the frustration, but I think it's more helpful to have a perspective of hey, we're all in this together. If there's things that need to be critiqued or nuanced, we can all work on that together, but let's not ostracize some potential help, is how I feel.
And I think after your lung transplant, you should do a movie about you. I mean, I think it's a great movie already. So
thank you. It is. I've had a number of people demand that I write something. So we'll see. My primary forms of writing and expression is visual art, as you well know. But I might need to put it words at some point. So we'll see.
Absolutely. And so, do you work in the church also, or is it strictly your art now?
Strictly art now. So I'm right now in my studio in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is where I show up to work, which is another, I'm blessed to be alive at all. I'm blessed to breathe at all. And I'm blessed to show up and make art as my job. I mean, that's beyond words for sure. I come in here and get to it every day and throw glitter and paint and stuff around.
So you must have glitter on yourself all the time, it seems.
A lot of the time. Yeah, a lot of the time. Don't worry, everybody out there. I've talked to every pulmonologist about it. They say glitter can't enter the airways. So,
Fabulous. Good to hear.
And I know that I don't want to send a picture of me with glitter in my x-rays.
Very funny and good to know. So how is having CF and getting around in that crazy, wonderful city of New York?
Yeah, it is hard. It is really hard. I've been driving, mostly lately because you take the subway still to get to the hospital. It takes about an hour and 10 minutes, and it's hard, Take an elevator if there's one there. If not, I just go slow up the stairs. So that's hard anyway. In the winter, it's been pretty brutal. We got really cold temperatures now and wind. That's kind of the hardest part about it. So getting up those subway stairs and wind hitting you, I mean, it's kind of unreal. So I try to, just move as slowly as I can and take it one breath at a time. That's all you can do.
Do you realize the mark that you've made already in this world and to people all over? I mean, I hope so, but I just wonder if do you feel it?
I do a lot of times. I mean, to the question of do I know the full extent? Probably not, and I'm glad to inspire any and everybody that I can. Absolutely, all to God's glory. I mean, I'm graced and blessed to be here at all. I'm always receive and I'm excited to hear anybody saying that there's been a positive impact, any hope I can bring to help people in those hopeless times. I mean, that's what we want to do for sure.
My kids have not, and hopefully, I mean, I hope they don't have to have a lung transplant because as you know, you're living it. It's a whole nother disease, so to speak.
Different set of complications.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
So going into a second transplant,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there's so much hope on the other side once you get this done,
Right.
and you've been through it before, I mean,
Right.
what are your feelings now as you wait for that page or call?
For sure. And a lot of the feelings are similar to the first time, but one different thing that I know now is that I could not have imagined how good it could be on the other side. Like I had no way, no framework to imagine. Like my first time running was across the Sydney Harbour Bridge in Australia, like climbing mountains with my kids and, being able to run races and stuff. I mean, I couldn't have even fathomed that. So now I know that I go into this also a little more well aware of the pain that likely will be involved, but with a sense of like, I don't know all of what I'm going to see on the other side, on the positive side, and what I'll be able to do with my kids and how older they'll be and how rich and full it'll be. So, yeah. So I'm keeping my eyes on that.
Fabulous. I know it depends when the lungs become available, but do they give you, or you're just at the mercy of someone's, I mean, it is a tragedy because someone else will die, but it's a beautiful gift that they'll be giving you. So it could be anywhere from tomorrow to a year. Yeah,
it could be any time, and, they're thinking likely a longer wait with me because of the issue I had was antibody rejection. So they're looking for lungs without these certain antibodies, which rules out like 70% of potential donors. So it could be a while or it could be any second. And so, we're just waiting and praying and hoping. And you're right. It's like simultaneously both a tragedy and a beautiful gift, and such is life. It's a lot like New York City, as you brought up before. It's like simultaneously awful and beautiful, like it's all of it. And that's kind of life. There's just so many questions like, why does this have to happen at all? Why was I given this? Why is anybody given this? Why has anybody struggled with cancer? Any of these things. And simultaneously, like beauty that you see from angles that maybe you couldn't have fully, appreciated if not having overcome struggles like that. It's mind-boggling. So you keep the faith, breathe the breath, and enjoy the ride.
Now, let me ask you about your brother. How's your brother doing?
He's doing good, pretty stable. And again, some of the Vertex drugs have really helped him stabilize, I think. I was starting to take Orkambi and had for a year, and then ended up needing a transplant. But so it was like a little late for me in terms of longer term stability. But he's been doing well.
That's great. And I think from just talking to my kids, the hardest part for them is, or maybe it's a blessing, I'm not sure, is that people don't. It's probably a blessing because people don't know. But at the same time, because you can just get on with life unless you're on oxygen, and then it's obviously there's something wrong. But is that good that you don't have to talk about it unless you want to?
Just in terms of like with people in the public, or
right? Mm-hmm. When you're out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's everybody's different. I mean, some do and some don't. I mean, it's just kind of depends on the scenario and the person and the circumstance.
What's your next run or your next plan after you have your transplant?
Yeah. Well, we haven't made it to Africa yet, so I've been threatening all my kids with, okay, we're all going to Africa somewhere. So it's just a, international trip that we've somewhere, likely South Africa, I guess. But I've told them for sure, like, hey, remember when I was healthy, we're going to be traveling a lot. They're like, okay, we're ready. That's the plan for sure.
That's fantastic. So what are you working on right now? What piece or pieces?
Yeah, so there's a kind of two different pieces on the floor right now. These jumble of scars, and then, similar style as ones before, kind of energy coming out of them, and these shiny, healthy cells around the bottom on this particular one. And then these other ones, scars are kind of dangling like chains, almost like, ropes up and down on this other piece. So yeah, just mixing it around in here.
And if somebody wants to buy one of your pieces or they want to look at some of your work, where should they go?
My website is dylanmortimer.com, DylanMortimer.com. And there's contact info for me on there. And you can just message me directly and we can have a conversation. There's small pieces. Smallest range is around 16 by 12 inches and go up to 8 feet. And there's sculptural pieces as well. So hit me up. I'd love to help anybody out.
Fantastic. Well, your work is beautiful, so it would be worth their while for anybody to check it out. Just one last question. If you're, thinking about a role model or someone that inspires you either with CF or not with CF, or maybe it's just a place, what inspires you? And it could be many things, of course.
Man, there are so many people, but I mean, the top of the list for me, not to like cop out in any religious way, but Jesus, inspires me in every way, both as his person and who he is, everything written about him, everything he did, but him as the very idea and essence of like what I was talking about earlier, being loved more than you can fathom, or ever imagine. That's shakes me to the core in every way. It never gets old. There's always newness to those realities to me. So yeah, I keep, whether the hardest times or the best times, I keep looking to him to learn like how to be a human being.
And that's a beautiful thing too, because some people do go the other way and start blaming and sure. No judgment on anyone, but it would seem it's harder to do that, It's
understandable, and there's certainly times I've done that, but there's a better way, I think, and we don't always do the better way, but the better way is, again, finding hope, and even when it seems like there is none. And so, he to me personifies that hope in every way.
Well, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your life. And
thank you.
Yeah, it's just a small segment, but very interesting to hear about all you've been doing. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, check us out online at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's the BONNELL foundation.org. Or follow us on social at the Bonnell Foundation.